Hello, my dearest confidants. I wanted to talk to you about the power of trusting yourself. If you remember a while back, I had said that I had had a disagreement with someone and it ended a relationship. And part of that was um, some nutritional choices that I had been making for my herd. And I'll show you the photos that I took. Um, I'll do a photo collage for you of when I first got my rescues and um, and then the picture that I took earlier this year before I decided to really go all in and change their nutrition program to a specific type of forage that had been highly recommended to me. And then I'll show you what ultimately what they look like that ultimately made me decide that that wasn't the right choice for them, and that even though it was a very hard decision for me to change, that it was the right decision. And I'll show you what their 2 week progress looks like. We still have an uphill battle. However, I can tell that changes are happening, positive changes. And I do a lot of research for a lot of reasons, because I like to know the full picture. And I utilize Chat GPT a lot because I know it has access to all of the information and not just what I would be biasedly looking for, right? So that way I can make the best decisions that I can for myself and for those that I directly influence. And so I had been really struggling, even seeing the positive changes in my animals. I had been really struggling with trusting my gut because it had been so blatantly in my face that I was making the wrong decision, that I had asked ChatGPT, okay, let's hypothetically say that I didn't change their forage and I continued on the path that I was on and I just added in um, a mineral balancer. Um, and also amino acids to help build up their muscle mass that they had been losing. Because it wasn't just weight, it was muscle mass. I started noticing coordination problems. Before I had been able to pick up their feet and they would hold them up for me, and now they're not able to do that, especially on the hind end. Um, and it was really concerning for me, and I kept going against my gut because I was believing what somebody else was telling me, right? Um, I noticed, they had been gaining weight, starting to look round, and I when I first got them, they had a very high load of parasites, and so they looked rounder and healthier than they necessarily were. There was a lot of detoxing going on when I got them, but you can see the difference in the photos very clearly of how um, their bodies have changed in the last 7 months that I've had them. And we were going in an uphill position. But the thing is that it was a lot of filler calories. It wasn't a lot of not digestible fiber. It was unusable protein. Um, and it had a high sugar content, which I absolutely am trying to avoid because giraffes tend to suffer with metabolic issues, whereas other breeds of horses don't. They're genetically predisposed to have that issue with controlling how their body responds to sugar. And my Pinto, the black and white horse, she has a similar problem. And I noticed all of them going in the wrong direction when I changed to this quote unquote higher quality forage. And while for the baseline herd that it's for with no metabolic issues, it is a great forage choice. It really is. But for my herd, it wasn't. And so, even though I was hearing that little voice in my head telling me that I was making a wrong decision. I was listening to external forces. And this is not just this situation, but a lot of situations in my life have been that way. And I really have been coming back to myself. I really have been coming back to, what does Alicia want? What does Alicia feel? What's going on in Alicia's body? What is her body telling her, right? And it not always is what the outside world is going to echo. And so, um, yeah, I finally asked ChatGPT, like, what hypothetically, if I had continued with the same forage, but I just added in a mineral balancer and an amino acid profile to this, how would that have changed my results? Because I want the full picture. Like, I changed to this forage over here, but what if I had stayed on this forage? And ChatGPT was very clear in telling me, no, you made the right decision. You would have seen small gains, um, but you would have ultimately plateaued and regressed, which is the whole reason why I said I wanted to stop feeding that forage in the first place. Because I noticed that they had plateaued and then they start to actually regress. Like the muscle loss was more pronounced and their ribs are more prominent. And there is some redistribution of fat and muscle when the body is going through a change. That's inevitable. But they started to look sickly, unhealthy to me. And again, they started having problems with their coordination and balance. And so, and then I had one that hooves weren't even really growing at all. And so I really had to take all of that in and just stop the noise, stop the outside noise. I had been listening to, I'm trying to do the best, right? I'm trying to do perfect. And so I had been reading all of this stuff and looking at all of these things and trying all of these things. And I'm like, slow down. You need to chill. Just be patient. Be patient and make sure that what you're doing with your financial burden is beneficial. What is the most beneficial thing that I can do for my herd? With the financial constraints that I have, because I'm not rich, right? There is a budget. And so I made changes that would provide the biggest beneficial um, outlook for my herd while managing my pocketbook. And while the changes are slight, the pictures from 0 day and day um, 15, you can definitely tell there's a difference. And for me to be able to see that kind of progress in 2 weeks is astounding to me. And it affirms that my gut was right and I should listen to it more often. Now, I'm not saying that the people that I was listening to were wrong. I'm saying my reality is different. And if you understand anything about um, how your reality is perceived, you understand what I'm saying, right? Um, I was watching a video yesterday by somebody that I follow and that I trust by the name of Phil Good. And he was saying, it kind of like confirmation bias, like I was talking about earlier. So, like, religious people are going to hang out with religious people. People that smoke are going to hang out with other smokers. People that drink are going to hang out with other drinkers. And so, your core beliefs are strengthened each time you have those interactions, right? And so, for the people that were giving me this advice, that was good for them. Um, it wasn't working for my situation because my reality was different, right? I'm working with metabolic prone horses, metabolic issue prone horses, and they aren't. And so there's always a learning curve, there's always something new. Um, but this experience, these horses have taught me so much. Oh my gosh. In 7 months, they've taught me so much about myself, about, um, how the universe protects me and takes care of me. And they've taught me more about horse body language and how insanely intuitive they are. And it just, it blows my mind how much these girls have changed my life in the past 7 months. And I really want to do what's right by them because they are also senior horses, and that changes things too. Um, Giraffes have a life span of like 25 years, and I have one that came to me. I thought she was 17 and she's actually 20. And so my time with them is short, and I want to make sure that I'm listening to them, right? There's all of these, everybody's always going to have something to say. Everybody's always going to have something to say. Um, but I really need to listen to myself and listen to them because they know best, right? I have one horse that absolutely refuses any type of synthetic supplement. Anything that I give her that's synthetic, she immediately sniffs it out in her bowl and she refuses to eat it. And so that really made me go the route of herbal protocols. Um, and I've seen such huge dividends. And like I said, the forage I changed, and I noticed that was the only thing that I changed was the amount of this quality forage. And then that's when I noticed the shift in their bodies, including hers. She started to actually get fatter. The Belgians got skinnier, and she got fatter, to where she started to have that little ridge line on her back that says you're starting to get a little chunk chunk. And so kind of like on humans, the fatter they are, the deeper in their spine is in their backs. And so, yeah, there's a definite correlation between the forage that I was feeding them and what they actually need. And so I'll continue to monitor the changes. And of course, if I end up being wrong and they plateau and they regress, then I'll pivot again. But that's the other great thing that I pride myself on is that I am very acutely aware of changes within their bodies. And I'm going to continue to listen to my intuition because it was right in the beginning. I had reservations in the beginning, and that's why I wasn't feeding it. I was giving it as like a top dressing, like basically like your dessert after your meal. And then I listened to outside influence, and I started to feed them majority of that feed instead of what I had originally been giving them as far as their main hay source. But all of the other supplements stayed the same. And that's when I noticed the decline. So there's definitely a direct correlation between that. And so, um, yeah, the power of listening to your intuition and trusting yourself is, you can't beat it. You really have to, if you want to feel settled within yourself, you have to pay attention to that still small voice, that pain in the shoulder, that catch in your breath, that um, tossing and turning in the bed at night. You really need to pay, because those are signs, right? Just like horses speak to you without a language. They tell you when something is bothering them by the way that they flick their ears, or they turn their eyes towards you, or they won't let you touch a certain spot on their bodies. Um, your intuition is like that too. And you can miss it if you're just going about your day doing whatever it is that you do. You can miss it. And so, yeah, yeah, I'm very um, honored that these girls chose me just like I'm choosing them, and that we get to spend this time together. So, no special written words for today, um, but I thought this was imperatively important. I love you, my dearest confidant. Until next time.